Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I know it is after lunch, and it was a heavy lunch, so we'll try to keep this session quite interactive and interesting. It's a tough subject, right? We are talking about the effect regulation has on healthcare, right? And everybody's got an opinion on that. We are going to focus on basically consumers are already online and expecting healthcare services to be available online, right? That's where the future is all online, right? But the regulations in India were set in the past, right? I mean, for example, the MCI Act was 1956, amended a couple of times. The Drugs and Cosmetic Act was 1940, not amended. So there's a gap between what the regulation exists, the acts that exist, and the reality on the ground with respect to consumers. To discuss how to really bridge the gap, I'll have a bunch of eminent people from on the panel. First and foremost, let me invite Dr. Bhabatosh Mishra. He's the EVP from Apollo Munich Insurance, and he's been involved with them since inception. And he's got a strong career in general management, underwriting, and is associated with industrial bodies such as FICCI, CII, and so on. Right? So I invite him to come on stage to throw insight on how insurance can play a role here. Please invite Dr. Bhabatosh Mishra. Next, I would like to invite Ms. Upasana Arora. She's a director at Yashoda Super Speciality Hospitals in Ghaziabad. She is a keen champion of quality. So she is involved in, she's an accredited NABH accreditor, and she plays active role in CAHO, AHPI, and all kind of quality things. Please give a big hand to invite Ms. Upasana here. Unfortunately, Dr. Tarun Agarwal, who was also on the panel, had to leave. So unfortunately, we're going to miss him. He's the president of PSA. Unfortunately, he had to leave early. The next panelist is Dr. Sudhir Gupta. He's the president of Indian Radiology and Imaging Association. Not only is he a very accomplished doctor, the most impressive thing is that after heading departments of various hospitals, he started Cygnus Medicare, which in a span of less than 4 years has grown to 12 hospital chains in North India. Please welcome Dr. Sudhir Gupta. Next on the panel is Mr. Niranjan Ramakrishnan. He's the CIO at Sir Ganga Ram Hospital. He's been a champion of how technology can play a role in hospital management, practice management, EMR, PHR, and has been driving the portal at Sri Ganga Ram. He's also CEO of Invest2Care Technologies Private Limited, a company that focuses on innovations in patient management. Please invite Mr. Niranjan to come on board. Next panelist is Mr. Nishant Bajaj. He's CEO at W-Pratiksha Hospital, Northeast Healthcare System. Basically, he's an engineer who was a consultant and suddenly got into building a hospital, a successful one in Gurgaon. And he's also founder of Integra Ventures, the first major healthcare consultancy firm in Northeast, and also co-founder of a charitable institution which works with Smile Train. Please invite, okay, there he is, Mr. Nishant Bajaj on stage. Please give a big hand to him, please. The last panelist we have is Mr. Tarun Bhambra. He basically heads the business for insurance and pharmacy at Practo. Before that, actually, he was an investor. So he moved on from being an investor to doing something about it. Prior to that, he was a consultant at McKinsey, and he's a graduate of ISB and IIT Kharagpur. So ladies and gentlemen, a big hand to the panel. The topic is very interesting. So basically, just to give a quick background on the topic is, regulations are important because healthcare is a very serious topic. But unfortunately, regulations are quite outdated. And we have an esteemed panel here, and we will go into details about certain topics here. The topics will be online, right? The consumers are already online. How should the regulation change to really support this online kind of behavior? So the first thing we'll talk about is the consumers are already searching for doctors online. That's the reason we are here in Practo. And consumers have been doing that in the past, but in the past it was always telephone directories and so on, which was just a contact information. But in this era of digital era, consumers want a lot more information about the doctor to choose them, right? But the regulations are in the past. So regulations really don't let doctors put a lot of information about themselves, whatever they've achieved in the past, etc., online. They constitute it as an advertisement, right? In this era of digital, so I'll ask Dr. Sudhir Gupta to just throw some light on what should be allowed here, how should we regulate this, and thoughts on it.
Good afternoon, everybody. I think as Mr. Krishnan had also touched on this, that what should be the factor on which we decide our doctors or we choose our doctors. And as the practice is, you either ask another friend of yours who's a doctor, who might be knowing this doctor, or you look at his qualifications, or you try to find out some patients who have been treated by this doctor. But that is not the most scientific way. I think what all of us would like over a period of time, and if those informations can be put on the online, then it will definitely help all of us. But I think that is a far-fetched imagination right now. But I would definitely like to see a focus on the outcomes. What are the percentage of success of the doctors who are treating their patients? So what are the percentage of successful surgeries, the infection rates, the experience for these specific kind of surgeries which I am going to look at. So these should be the informations which should be there. But I think that is not the trend in India right now.
Correct. So, Mr. Nishant, so you run a hospital, and for you it's important to really tell the world what kind of doctors you have, what kind of successes they have. And even for hospitals, though technically under the Act is not restricted from advertising, it becomes very hard to put the kind of information which Dr. Sudhir spoke about the successful outcomes, patients' testimonials, etc. So what's your view on that, sir?
Yeah, absolutely. So the recent MCI guidelines, we are told that hospitals can advertise, but we cannot put doctors' names or their qualifications and so on and so forth out there. So that really doesn't solve the purpose for us, because just advertising a hospital, the facility, the equipment doesn't help. Ultimately, the patient, I wouldn't say is coming only for a doctor, but it's a combination of factors that the patient takes into consideration before making a choice. And unless and this is the day and age of information. I mean, if you go online and there are so many blogs and other means of attaining that information anyway. So why restrict hospitals or doctors from putting the valid information out there? Now, of course, the so-called quacks or the RMPs, we are not able to, the law is not able to completely control them. Now, so I understand that we all understand that there's a risk if we go, if there are no regulation in the advertising, then anybody can advertise as, themselves being the best doctor or the best surgeon or having had the maximum number of successful surgeries and whatnot. But then I think the pendulum has swung a little too far on this one, as we say. So there is no equilibrium in the current state. Obviously, there needs to be third-party validation before we can project anything out there for the masses. But then, especially talking about the online space, there is not, right? You can buy a Google AdWords. I mean, apart from a few sensitive taboo topics, like maybe infertility or cancer, you can buy Google AdWords and so on and so forth and project anybody or any hospital or any provider as the top. Is just a function of what you bid. So I don't think that we are we have reached the right sort of balance between what is allowed and what is not allowed and how it needs to be regulated. So just this mindset of let's not do anything until we figure it out is only going to hurt the consumer, because they would be making their choices through touts or other people who are in the referral business, not necessarily doctors. Of course, everybody does not have the access to a reputed doctor or a trustworthy doctor who can recommend them to some colleague within the community. So what happens is that, and as providers, I have no qualms in saying that we get approached by these people all the time. Correct. That, they've become the center hub of information for basically referring patients, and it's purely on monetary incentives. So that's not helping the consumer anyway, in my opinion.
That's a great point. So a qualified doctor is prevented from doing certain of these things, but a quack is not prevented. So it actually brings an imbalance in the way consumers really access healthcare. So on the same line, Mr. Niranjan, given that the previous panel also was on basically telemedicine and online consultation, something like that requires a lot more richer information about a doctor to choose a doctor, right? And from your experience of having run hospital information systems and so on, in your view, what should be done to really make it easy to consumer to choose a doctor online, for especially online consultation?
Sorry, thank you, Practo. I actually, I think still we are not yet matured enough to really go online and, put the right content. The point I'm trying to make it is, from the enterprise perspective, there could be two, set of people. One is the small clinics and nursing homes, the doctors who own the practice. So there, the, mindset is going to be completely different. If you talk about a large hospital as an enterprise approach, if in case if you allow the doctors to advertise themselves, or you just give them a, for example, you read out about us, right? So whatever you're reading is whatever we are giving as a content about ourselves. I can write anything and you're going to talk about it, and everybody is going to create an opinion based on the introduction. So that's where I think the MCA or the government has a concern that, who's going to say what, and, who's going to validate that. They will say that this is the first ever surgery we did in the world. This is the, kind of activity. So from the enterprise perspective, develop and maintain our own website, listing out all the doctors on our website, we have a lot of challenges. In case if I just publish whatever my doctors are giving, and if I have to publish in my website, I'll have a big challenge. So it takes, the development of website takes only 3 weeks, and the publishing of our own hospital doctors' names in the website, it takes 3 months from collecting the content, moderating the content, and reviewing the content. So if within an organization, if I'm going to face this challenge, as a country, if they have to really put the guidelines, it's going to take a lot of effort. So there, I think still we are not yet matured enough exactly to say what we really mean when we are really marketing ourselves or promoting ourselves. Of course, there are challenges that, as you rightly said, like the doctors are not even allowed to express up their success stories, their, whatever their achievements to the, community part of it. That's where the branding comes up, the other things comes up. Hospital should, in the right forum, right way, they have to really promote the doctors. But there is a challenge in managing the content online, because if you are going to just allow them to go online, it's going to be, there are challenges definitely. So that needs to be moderated.
Great point, sir. So Dr. Sudhir, you have been, you're a president of a doctors association. So do you believe that a doctors association can self-regulate and not allow certain of these things rather than being regulated from outside from the government? What's your view on that, sir?
I think self-regulation is the dream, for everybody. If we can self-regulate ourselves, if we can self-discipline ourselves, then I don't think any law is required. But unfortunately, that is not what happens, and laws are made, and they are many a times when the laws are made, they are flawed, and especially the implementation of the laws is flawed. It is not only the laws, but the interpretation of that and the way they are implemented, the way the inspector Raj comes in, the way anybody is left out and anybody is picked up. So these are the basic flaws in any law for that matter. But yes, that is a dream that like I'm a radiologist primarily, and in our association, like we all know, the PCP and DT Act these days has been a major bone of contention between the association and the government. Also, there was a strike for 2 days, nationwide strike, and this is a law which is meant for sex selection, against the sex selection, gender selection. So we all, as an association, we have told the government very clearly that we are absolutely in for this law. We want even more stringent actions against anybody who is found indulging into sex determination. But there are very bad provisions within the law that not filling up the forms is equated to doing sex determination. Means everything is equated as contravention of the law. So these kind of flaws have to be not there. Then, but as association, like we immediately take action against our members. But as an association, we can only throw them out of our association. That is the only power we have. So, but ultimately the law comes into action, and that is why laws are required, because we as
Great point, Dr. Sudhir. So another topic we just brushed upon is when we start going to tier 2 cities and tier 3 cities, there is lack of specialists. And Dr. Sudhir, yourself, you're running a chain of hospitals. Ma'am, you're running a hospital where, and of course you are working with the Northeast. So there is a certain lack of specialists that's available in these kind of cities, right? And the Act basically prevents, though there is somebody like something like a sugar is a very common problem, but to be called a diabetologist, you require very complicated degrees, and very few people do have it, right? So that becomes a challenge in treating the consumers, especially in tier 2, tier 3 cities. So starting with you, Ms. Nishant, what do you think we should do about the gap there?
No, it's about the same thing, right? So either we start with, as Dr. Gupta rightly said, right, self-regulation. If there is some kind of a regular licensing or something involved where, people are concerned that, it's not a one-time thing that, you've got your registration and you're done, but through self-regulation, through the associations, if we get some kind of self-discipline in the fraternity itself, I think that will be the best, rather than some kind of external lawmaking sort of pressure from the outside. Like for PNDT, for example, now, again, as Dr. Gupta just said, the pendulum has again swung way too far. Filling out wrong information in terms of how many kids you have can land the radiologist in prison, behind bars, which is ridiculous. So that's the problem when we try and solve these kind of things with an external third-party regulator. These things kick into place. So I think self-regulation within peer pressure, something within the association. I've not been, because I'm not a doctor, I've never been a part of any association, so probably it's easier for me to say than for someone like Dr. Gupta to implement. But I think there has to be some kind of a metric by the immediate neighboring community as in terms of who is qualified, or at least recognition. They can say, I'm recognized by the IMA or whatever it might be as a cardiologist, even though, because in that city there is no other DM cardiology, for example.
Exactly.
With the example.
So, Ms. Upas, sorry, I want to add to that.
So, just like I want to make a small point over there. Whenever you go about trying to expect a party to set down rules of engagement, right? What happens is you are forced to do it for the lowest common denominator in the society, right? So the law ends up coming up for the worst possible scenario, the worst possible cheating kind of a quack out there. How do we control him? Whereas what it does in actual sense is the one who's going to cheat is going to continue to cheat till you catch him. And while the rest of them are suffering through higher cost of doing work, because so much more additional process has been imposed on you. On the other hand, saying that self-regulation also is a difficult task, because we have been trying to implement it and it has not come about, right? Like Dr. Sudhir pointed out, it's a holy grail for us. But it doesn't eliminate the situation of these quacks, which is the core of the problem, which is eroding the credibility of the medical fraternity. I think the one of the ways out is, as Dr. Krishnan also mentioned, is instead of setting procedures and rules, right, what is better to set out is probably standards. What are you allowed to measure? And you can talk as loud as you want about that measure because it can be objectively measured, right? So for example, a cardiologist should be asked to maintain a record of his, say, angiograms and angioplasties, right? And he should be allowed, if he wants to say success rate and outcome rate is this, because it's an objective measure. So what is it that we are allowed to talk about? We should go more towards in the positive direction, because that allows automatic regulation, because there is a way to objectively measure something and publish it, which basically I'm trying to put forward a point is that the answer is not controlling whether we show information to the patient or not. It's actually giving more information, but in a standard format that can be brought forth.
So that's a great point, Tarun. So for example, in Practo, we have started something called Blue Book. I don't know whether most of the doctors have seen it, where we are letting the associations and the doctors themselves tell what kind of degrees are needed to be called a specialist, because patients cannot decipher degrees. They don't know how to read it. So it makes sense for all of you to contribute to that, and we want to make it like a movement where the doctors themselves tell, look, even with the PG diploma course, it's good enough to be called a diabetologist if you have an internal medicine, for example, right? So those kind of things, I think there is a moment which patients are asking for, and I think it's for the doctors also to pick it up. To Ms. Upasana, for you the question is, you have been a champion of quality and shown that some sort of discipline and way you collect data has been able to run hospitals in a large scale. So in your view, I mean, what can be done, right, especially in Ghaziabad, whatever place you're running, to make sure that you can clearly inform what kind of doctors a patient needs to go for and what kind of information you want to put online? What's your thoughts on it, especially given that you're in a...
First of all, before giving answer to your question, I would like to say something to my colleagues, that this is the high time we people should change our image in front of journal people. What is happening these days, everybody is thinking negative about us. That is the big cause of all these, legal issues. So we are losing our credibility in terms of, people are always thinking why this doctor is writing this test, why this hospital is asking for surgery. And for all this thing, I think from Apollo Munich, he is mentioning rightly, there should be a system like accreditation. So at least there is an authenticity that this hospital is doing right things, there is a standard. And what we can put online, we cannot put patient name, we can never disclose his name, even we cannot write on out of room also. We cannot tell anybody that, but same time we can write that what we have done. If we have done a good surgery with good outcome, hospital or doctor wants to tell others that this is my specialty, this is my USP, we are doing very good. So we can write it, there is no problem. But when there is a law, we are supposed to follow. But if you see, only bunch of people are following all the laws. When there is a regulation, there are so many people who don't want to do anything with the regulation. They are running their own things. So when you are writing something online, please keep in mind whatever you are writing, that should be right, correct, and 100% whatever you are writing, you have done it. One should not write anything just to, attract patients. If somebody can go, and I wish after some time we are going to, going to get somebody as an organization who can come and check, like as an accredited hospital, if we are claiming that we have done this, NABH can come and see whatever we are doing, it's right or not. So if you are not accredited, it is not like that. Self-regulation, Dr. was saying, if we can, then this is the best thing. I think this is the best remedy for all the illnesses we are facing in healthcare.
Great point. Dr. Bhabatosh, I mean, your view on how insurance, which is at least collects so much of information about patients and outcomes, can play a role in this?
Well, before that, insurance companies do not have a comprehensive set of information. And the set of information they have for insured patients is not reflective of the general population. While that is of lot of use, but it is not as much of use when you consider health policy, regulations, and laws are concerned. But while having said that, there are three basic flaws or possibly three basic issues on the current regulations and laws are concerned. And this is where insurance side and provider and patient at the end of the day could come up comprehensively. One is currency of the laws that you have already touched upon. Insurance Act itself is made in 1938 and others are also known. These are not current, whereas the world and the consumer has moved on far beyond. From a paper-based and complete physical treatment, things have moved to more technicalities, more web-based, information being available widespread at a click of a button. Laws have double the speed that is required. One, they have to become relevant for the current times. And then think of what would it be in 5 years' time and then make it robust so that in 5 years it's again not obsolete. The second component is comprehensiveness of these regulations. When I say comprehensive, it means does it really govern or regulate or guide all facets of treatment, outpatient, radiology, inpatient, in-hospital, in-clinic, and so on? Does it also address all stakeholders, which is what are patient rights and what are patient obligations? Today, another set of problems emerging, there is a trust deficit between the patient and the doctor, so much so it may not be as relevant in a Delhi NCR. You go to tier 2, 3 cities, there is so much of violence against doctors. That is putting off doctors in rendering the care that they are designed to do, and most of them throughout their life have dedicated to the same cause. It also does not touch upon each stakeholder like a hospital or a clinician or an insurer. In some part, insurers are governed by a regulator in this country, but what are those laws? And if at all they are there, the third component is, are they very clear? And are there convictions? Are there been implementations of each side of it? Because whatever system, whether a hospital clinician or a patient or an insurer, there are some elements which may not be as good as the rest. And there has to be a system which weeds out the elements which are not good. Because eventually in a scenario like this, who suffer is the ones who have completely dedicated their lives to rendering care, whether on a healthcare delivery or a financing side. I'll just take a minute to highlight a very funny relationship between patient, doctor, and the provider, payer, which is insurer. Most of the hospitals and clinicians in India are seriously, sincerely working for entire life to render care. They have improved the healthcare system and life expectancy health of the population in this country. As insurance companies, if you look at health insurance industry, for every 100 rupees they collect, 110 rupees claim they are paying today on health, making a loss of not 10 but more than that. 98% of the claims which come to health insurance companies are paid eventually. Only 2% are rejected for a variety of reasons. It's a unique relationship today where the patient doesn't trust the doctor doesn't trust the insurance company doesn't trust the doctor, and the patient also doesn't trust the insurance company. Still they are sticking around together. And that seriously laws and regulations have a role to play, because eventually such a scenario will not sustain for long, and only two things sustain globally anywhere in a financing mechanism. Either government pays for healthcare or there is an insurance which pays for healthcare. Out-of-pocket spending being high is a disaster, and countries after countries will do something to correct that. In our country, forget it, government is not increasing 1% to a 15% of GDP for financing. So the only alternative is health insurance.
But on the same topic, sir, we would love to see a lot more innovation in the kind of products that will come out from insurance companies. They have not come out for a multitude of reasons, right? Because in a population of 1 billion, so few have insurance. So what's your view? What should we do, or what should the insurance companies do, or what should the government not do to really enable that?
No, best is not leaving anything for the government. Government is pretty busy in a lot of other things. Best is self-regulation, is self-initiative, in my opinion. What could providers, what could insurers, patients, and organizations like Practo could do together? They have synergies in 3 aspects. Number 1, information. Make credible information available very easily, which can be consumed easily by the patient. Now, it's again a funny situation when it is like a doctor and engineer talking to each other, but in their own languages. Neither of them understand. The clinical side is a complex language. The health insurance is another legal language. They don't understand each other. And organizations like Practo has a role where they are actually interpreters to convert this into information that the provider could consume, and providers information for a health insurance company to consume, eventually patient benefits.
That's a great point. So Tarun, do you like to add something to that on how technology can play a role to make this win-win for the insurance companies, the hospital providers, and even the doctors?
So yeah, I think like Dr. Bhabatosh said, I completely agree that government is fairly busy with a lot of things. And they have tried to do, basically the point comes down to creating interoperability of data. Having it more in a structured fashion, providers, patients, and payers being able to connect with each other. And I think the only industry, I'm again and again alluding to Dr. Krishnan's presentation, is which has made success of this is at any level is the exchange pieces is finance industry. And in finance industry, the only way they have done it is that no one is trying to hoard information. Everyone understands that currency belongs to the consumer, and the parallel in our case is the patient record belongs to the patient. And if the patient wants to move from A point to B point, whether it is a provider A to provider B or a provider to payer, or even within his family, he should be freely allowed to do so, right? And that's where I think technology can help. Technology can help in standardization. Technology can help in easy movement. It'll need a little change from our side, from the ecosystem, to also understand that as an overall, the entire ecosystem benefits. That's, by the way, the reason why finance sector has actually finally become one of the biggest sectors in the world. Primarily because the more interactions are possible freely, it's more easier to grow the network. More people will come under the ambit, more people will be treatable, and everything will flow from there. Even the telemedicine piece, right? It'll become far easier if the information can flow from point A to point B. Remote consultations will be possible. Dr. Sudhir, I think offline you were alluding to a model which was, remotely helping a village. But what use is it if all the information is lost, if the patient is triaged at the village, but when brought to the center has to be completely again triaged? right? It's a waste of effort. So standards and interoperability of data, we will all have to open our lockers and be willing on that.
On that same topic, Mr. Niranjan, you have been working on many of the systems, they're fairly complex systems as a CIO. So what is the limiting for actually making all this interoperable? What's the limitation factor for insurance companies, provider systems, or maybe like an open platforms like us to interoperate?
See, I think we should, instead of creating our own standards and, discussing amongst policies, etc., I think we should quickly learn from other industries, right? As he rightly said, if I can go to SBI bank and deposit money, and I can go to HDFC, I can withdraw my money instantly. Physical cash I'm giving to somebody and somewhere else I'm able to withdraw. Why can't I do this for my health information thing? But the point is, whether it is even a simple feedback system for Ola cab driver, like, you get down and just want to rate him, and he's so worried about his rating because it pays money incentives or his reputation. So even a simple rating system can really bring in a lot of discipline. Like, the reason why Ola driver was trying to be very polite to you is because he wants to get the 5 rating, so end of the day he can get 1,500 rupees extra. So small system we can learn from other industries. So challenge is not about the interoperability alone. Now most of the hospital information systems have that kind of compliances, etc. But problem is what exactly information you want to share with the patient. Earlier you were sharing with bits and pieces, and maybe now you have a little bit structured data. But what set of information, to what extent you want to share? It's not against sharing to the patient, though patient is a custodian or owner of the information, but at the end of the day, someone is going to interpret the information, right? So he needs to share it to some other doctor or, clinical practice. So problem is, first of all, like, the business model should be very clear so that they are happy to share. Today in Ganga Ram, for example, maybe in another 3 months, 90% of our private OPD patient data is going to be stored in a structured format, and it's going to be available with the patient the moment they leave the hospital. They're going to have it in the mobile, and they're going to have an NFC card where just tapping the mobile, the card in the mobile, they're going to get all the information. So you don't even need a smart card reader in the neighboring hospital to access the information about the patient. So this is something I can really achieve it in 3 months' time. But is it really going to solve the problem in terms of cost, in terms of a lot of other things? So the other thing we can learn from other industries, like payer-driven market. For example, insurance thing, unless pay for performance, I don't treat the same patient for the same problem 3rd time within the stipulated time, then I don't get paid. Here you take the upfront payment, you put it in the pocket, whatever you do, whatever the information you give, it's not going to really make more sense. I think we need to really learn from a lot of other industries outside of India as well as within India. Then I think very easily we can really put things together.
Mr. Nishant, I mean, you run a much smaller setup than Sir Ganga Ram, and you have been struggling to get interoperability for a long time. So what's your view of how do we really achieve this?
See, I think what you said, right, it's all about adopting standards, right? We really, really lack discipline. So when we're talking about a multidisciplinary approach to a patient record has to have a very multidisciplinary approach, right? Like there'll be many, it's not just one person maintaining the record. That's the difference from a bank, right? You're maintaining very few parameters, and it's basically one, so there's no multidisciplinary approach there. With the patient record, you have the nurse who's maintaining the record, obviously the vitals and so on and so forth. Then you have multiple doctors, right? From your GP to your specialist to your surgeon and so on and so forth. So all of them have to abide, including the radiologist and the pathologist. Obviously, from we've gone very electronic in terms of towards electronic transmission when it comes to laboratory tests and everything. Now all those are automatically transmitted from the barcode. There's nobody who's typing and everything. But still, so that is something that has become quasi-standard, I would say. Our hospital has our own way. We follow that standard. I'm sure there's no published, or at least commonly followed standard out there, right? When we talk to the integrators, the device integrators who integrate these machines with our system, they say, okay, what do you want? How do you want to integrate it? They should be the one, saying this is the standard, you're supposed to adopt this standard. So coming back to your question, I think the greatest challenge that we are facing is discipline. So, everybody wants, nahi, hame to aise hi aadat hai. We need our form in this way. I'm an orthopedics guy. I don't care what you are maintaining about the vitals and everything. I want my form to appear in this way, and when I click on the record, I want the record to show this. So a cardiologist has a completely different view, versus a gynecologist. But ultimately, the patient record is a very multidisciplinary kind of thing. So that discipline, that standardization has not at all come into play.
Dr.
I think I would like to add here 2-3 things. First is that, as we have all been talking, that unfortunately we Indians are not self-disciplined and we need to be governed by law. And that is what we have seen, Ms. Upasana would agree that NABH was nobody's baby till the time CGHS made it compulsory to be taken within 18 months or something like that. So now all the people who were interested in CGHS panels, they started taking NABH. Now recently, Haryana government has also done that and people are running for it. Many, many governments have done it and at least entry level they have started doing it. Very recently, Insurance IRDA has also come up with a proposal that the hospitals will be graded or somehow, it has become an essential part of it, at least the entry part of it. So everybody, you will see in the next 2 years' time, everybody will be NABH accredited or not accredited. I mean, that is how the things will become. So it has to be imposed upon us. I think insurance companies will have to take that lead. No hospital or almost no nursing home can survive today without the panels of government panels or at least the insurance panels. It is impossible. Therefore, I would really take this opportunity to request the insurance guys, senior people sitting here, that they should come up with these kind of regulations, that these kind of informations about the patient and their doctors and these accreditations have to be done and have to be asked for. Like, I won't name the company, but another insurance company, we had a long meeting and they requested us that they suggested that they have already started taking these kind of data about doctors, and I mean, it was more like an NABH kind of an information which they took from us. And we were very happy to provide it because we are already on the process of taking NABH. 2-3 hospitals have already taken in our group. So that kind of an insistence on your part will definitely help. Second point, I'm fully in agreement that insurance companies have to cough out more money than the premium they are getting right now. I think it is because of the less penetration that is happening right now, and over a period of time and more people will start taking insurance, or insurance companies will also start taking, participate in government insurance schemes, whether it is CGHS, whether it is ESI or other things, or RSBY. So I think that those profitabilities and those things will start coming. So we should make it more, outreached so that more and more people start taking it. The third point which I wanted to make was, that point also I had discussed with another company, which I will not again name, that I think managed care now needs to be thought of very seriously in India. As you were mentioning, that there is no standardization of prices on the part of the providers. You don't know whether cholecystectomy in this hospital will cost the payer, the insurance company, 20,000 or 70,000. So that kind of a difference is there. Therefore, I think we had actually suggested that let us do a pilot with our group hospitals of a managed care, that whatever premiums you are charging, and I think insurance people, they understand managed care much better than what I understand. So I think those kind of models have to be brought in, those kind of innovations have to be done on the payer side. And as we have been talking, that Practo kind of networks, Practo kind of open platforms, they can definitely enhance the credibility of the system, the information about the doctors, even the information about the patients. Because when the patient's information is there in a system, if it is possibly shared with the insurance companies, I think it will be much better to know whether this guy is an alcoholic beforehand, whether this guy is a hypertensive beforehand or a diabetic beforehand, which does not happen. Then they run after our doctors, please don't write that I'm a diabetic for the last 10 years. So these kind of things will, I think, stop.
Great point, sir. So unfortunately, this has been a great panel. Unfortunately, we're running out of time. We had a lot of other interesting things to discuss, but for the lack of time, let me just summarize. I think the panel has been fantastic. There have been providers here, payers, doctors. We all agree that some mechanisms of self-management, interoperability, where we work with each other is more important. I think that is the basic takeaway. And if you work closely with each other, the whole pie is much bigger. We can actually add a lot more value. There's value for everybody on the table. So I think that is the future we're looking towards, where we can actually work together, where the information is much more easily available to everybody. And also the fact that things like pharmacy, everything becomes a part of this, right? So the delivery of medicine, everything should become much more seamless and consumer-centric. With this, I would like to call this panel to the close. If you have any questions, I would like you to catch the panel members, not me, please, because they're the one who can answer the best. about any questions you have, and they'll be more than happy to answer. Thank you, gentlemen. Thanks, and lady. Thanks so much for the thing. Sorry. Oh, go ahead, ma'am. Yeah, please go ahead. Want to give the other one?
I just want to say thanks to Practo. I was always in two minds that one should go for marketing online or not. But today I was listening all presentations, especially your CEO, Sushant, who was telling us about this Practo. And when we know that our data is safe, these days we are supposed to go for such kind of online platform because half of the kids are in US or somewhere else. So how they can find a good doctor? They cannot ask neighbor or anybody. So I really thankful to you that it was a good session. And me and others who are here, I think on behalf of all this panel, we are saying thanks to you.
Thank you. Thank you.